Something like this week. And our friend Jim Lachey lived it very successfully back in the day. And he's with us now on the Brian Heating and Cooling Systems Fan Guest Hotline. All right, my friend, give me your best. Oh, I don't know, Earl Bruce pep talk. Give me your best. What do you remember the most?
Well, first of all, happy birthday, Anthony.
Thanks, brother.
No, it is. This is the week. This is the reason you come to Ohio State, as they say. And back in those days, both schools usually recruited. If Michigan was recruiting you, then Ohio State was recruiting, and just the opposite. And you had to make a choice. And Bo Schembechler did a great job recruiting the state of Ohio. Obviously as a former player here, growing up in the state. He covered the state well during recruiting. And, so when you made that choice, you made it for a reason. You wanted to be a Buckeye and you wanted to beat the team up north. And, that's the way it was with Woody. That's the way it was with Earl. I got the baby Woody with Earl being my head coach. And, the same way, the intensity that week, shaking his finger, at guys trying to get you fired up. And, Woody was still around, so we had Woody usually come talk to the team, Michigan week, and, that was always exciting to hear his thoughts on the game. And, Woody would, famously say the team that hits the hardest and the longest, that's one key. Whoever starts the fastest is going to get a great chance to win. And the team that is too damn smart to make mistakes is going to win that game. And, it was kind of the same speech year in and year out, but, basically that was it. You had to take care of your business. And my first year was 1981. Everybody remembers Art Sleester running in the end zone, winning 14-9. Great block by Von Brodnecks. And, I'll never forget, I was on kickoff return, and I was out there for the opening kickoff and just kind of felt like you're floating. I mean, you're so jacked up to be in that atmosphere. You dreamed about it. And here I am, 18 years old, out there in the field and getting to play against a team up north, and that's what it's all about. And, how hard and how physical that game is. And, we were playing for different reasons, a chance to win the Big Ten and a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. I mean, that was, kind of the only two things you had back then. Obviously now with playoffs and a Big Ten championship game and, playing for a national championship, that's a little bit different priorities that are out there. But still, it comes down to this game. And Michigan's had the upper hand, no question about it, the last 4 years. But you go back to the, from 2012 to 2019, Ohio State ran off 8 straight wins. And, the difference, what was the difference in that ball game? And it usually came down to line of scrimmage, who had the best offensive and defensive lines, could dominate that game. And, Ohio State had that. And for whatever reason, we haven't been able to get that figured out these last couple of years. And, that's what has to happen again this year. Going up there, our offensive and defensive lines got to dominate. Obviously, when you look at the defense and what Michigan likes to do, averaging 220 plus per game on the ground, you got to stop the run. And our defense has been fabulous stopping the run. Helped with 10 of our 11 opponents that we played under 100 yards. Need to make that number 11. And the team that doesn't turn the ball over, usually wins that game. And so all those things are kind of still the same. It doesn't matter what year it is, but all those basic principles that you need to win football games are true when you're playing a rival game like this.
So, Jim, there's going to be a lot of, curiosity this week, as you know, about, Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith and whether or not we will see them this week. Let's live in a world right now to where they don't play on Saturday. Jim, is the run game at a point to where you would have enough confidence that if those guys aren't available for Saturday, that they could go into Ann Arbor and maybe ride that run game and maybe come back to the city with a win?
So it's pointing in the right direction, right? The last two games, 222 against UCLA, 254 last week against Rutgers. It's starting to shape up at the right time of the year. When it gets to November, you got to have that rushing attack and have that ability to do it. And then you got to have somebody make some plays, right? Whether it's our tight ends, obviously Max Clare had a big game last week with 7 catches, had a couple key first downs by David Adolph, and Brandon Ennis stepped in and, had a nice touchdown reception there. They got to get it. They got to get after it. But I'm almost of the thought that man, I would do whatever it takes to play in this game. You know, if you got to, see Dr. Feelgood to make you, to get you ready to go, this game to me is more important than playing in the Big Ten championship. You know, if you take care of this game and boom, you win, you're going to have Indiana in the championship game. You know, I would look at that one as an opportunity. Like, hey, I gave it all I got. You know, we beat the rival. You know, if I can still go. But if you can't, then you got a month off basically before your next game. So, to me, this one is more important than the Big Ten championship game. And I would think that those guys kind of feel the same way. After the comments Jeremiah Smith said last year, but if he's good to go, he'll go. Carnell Tate, if they can. If they're healthy, they'll go. They want to make plays. They want to get a pair of gold pants. And, last year they won a lot of trophies, but they, didn't win the Big Ten and didn't get a chance to win a pair of gold pants. That's one of the first classes in a while that's come through here that, hasn't had that ability to get a pair of gold pants. And the same holds true for this class. We got to find a way to get a pair of gold pants.
Does anything concern you truly about this game other than the intangibles, the mental side, the streak you talked about, ending that? I mean, from those physical attributes you talk about, you feel Ohio State has the advantage in a lot of areas? Or is there something you're concerned with?
The adage that you win championships with great defense, if that holds true, that Ohio State has a great defense and they're going to have to play great, to win that game, to shut them down, make some plays, get some turnovers. In offense, take care of the football, finish drives, with kicks, hopefully extra points, and, get in the end zone and then play good on special teams. All those things seem to be a factor in big games. And, Michigan's got a lot to play for, too. They're playing for playoffs, right? They're sitting there at 9-2. If they finish 10-2, there's a great opportunity that they'll make the 12-team college playoff. So a lot on the line for both teams.
You're the man, buddy. I appreciate you. Thanks for making time for us as always. Have a great week with your family. It was so cool to see them on Saturday. Everybody there at the pregame. And have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you soon.
Same to you guys. Happy Thanksgiving, and thanks for having me on every Monday. I really appreciate it.
You're the best. Thanks, Jimmy. Quite a time for him back in the 80s with Tom Zach and John Frank and guys that got him. And there was one time he didn't. I think it was his junior year. And Michigan was a top 10 team, and so was Ohio State. And it was a matchup type of game. This one doesn't feel, I know Michigan's ranked, and they're at home, and they know they have the confidence of that maybe things have changed for them mentally, and that Ohio State has all the pressure, and if we can get an early turnover, we can put them on tilt a little bit, start questioning whether they are the better team. Like, that is their strategy. I'm wondering how aggressive they're going to be. We talk about these coaches, like Jim said, it's not like Michigan has nothing to lose. Like, they do. But I think they realize they are playing the number one team and the defending national champs. And in a weird way, they may feel like we have the advantage between the ears right now. That can all change if Ohio State comes out and slugs them a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
And puts that offense in a position where Cusdahl or Marshall, whoever's going to be running the football, or Underwood himself, has to then start to rescue the game. And you put it in a young quarterback's hands. And he's talented. He hits Marsh. He puts the ball sometimes where he wants it. Sometimes he sails it. He's still a young quarterback. He's not averse to mistakes. Like, he's got a chance to screw it up too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Because that's got to be a part of the game plan is, hey, let's win a lot on first and second down as a defense and make this true freshman beat us. Because we could talk a lot about Julian and how big the stage is for him. The stage is just as big for Bryce. It's one of the biggest games he's ever played in his life. Their two big games this year have both been on the road at Oklahoma and USC. So the environment, the anxiety for these guys, I'm sure will be pretty high as a 18-year-old and a first-year starter here. And so if they can take that away from Michigan, which has been a challenge all year long, I get that. But if they can do that and make that kid have to use his arm consistently to win the game, I think that's where you want to be if you're Matt Patricia and his defense.
The lack of experience on that team compared to McCarthy and Corum and Roman Wilson and that O-line, it's night and day. Yeah. Like, it really is. Yeah. I mean, Maryland opened that game last week with a 20-yard untouched run and went for it on 4th and goal at the 1 and got it. Like, Maryland had them at least pressured early. We'll come back. What a weekend it was. Party like a Roth Star up next. Rothman and Ice in the Fan.
Rothman and Ice.